And if you think all of that is crazy, what happens to the mail that's supposed to go to the mayor's office is really going to blow your mind. I had originally planned on suing Bill de Blasio about the key to New York City months ago, but life happens. Then he announced the private employer mandate, and I was like, okay, I got to do that research too. Started doing that research and realized, wait a minute, Eric Adams hasn't committed to keeping the mandates. So it was seeming like he was going to get into office and get rid of them. I'm like, okay, so if the private employer mandate is active on the 27th, Eric Adams takes office on the 1st, that's a quick turnaround. I may not even need to do anything. He'll do everything for me. Unfortunately, on December 30th, Eric Adams announces that he is keeping the mandates. Now I got to get to work. So I finish typing up the motions, the lawsuit, and I have the complaint. I have the motion for a TRO, temporary restraining order. I have the memorandum in support of the TRO. Then I have the affidavit and certificate. I got to get this filed in the court by 5 o'clock. By the time I get in the area of the Southern District Courthouse, it's already after 4, and I don't actually have any hard copies. I've just got it on my thumb drive. So I have to run over to FedEx, go to FedEx, get everything printed out, sign everything except for the affidavit, go up to the counter. Hey, who's the notary? So I can finish signing these documents. They don't have a notary at FedEx. So I have to find the UPS store, go there, get everything notarized. Restaple everything, organize it, separate everything, because in addition to dropping off a copy at the courthouse, I need to make sure I mail a copy to the mayor's office, City Hall.
Okay, I want to just take this brief moment to give you a brief lay of the land so you can see where everything is in relation to one another.
There's New York City Hall. There's the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the Southern District Courthouse. It's 20 minutes to 5 when I get to the UPS office. When I'm leaving, it's getting close to the wire. I'm on my way to the courthouse. I'm walking past City Hall, and there's actually protesters, anti-mandate protesters there. And I'm like, don't worry, I got something right here for them. Run over to the courthouse, get to the courthouse, look at my watch. It's like 5:02. However, I look at the stairway, they still have one of the gates open. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? Maybe I can still get this into the clerk's office. So I run up the stairs, get into the building, and there's a marshal there, and he's like, oh, you have paperwork to drop off. We have a drop box. And I'm like, yes, awesome. And the great thing about this, not only do they have a drop box, they stamp your paperwork so it's noted what date and time you've dropped everything off. Perfect. So I go stamp all my paperwork, put it into the drop box. Good. I've got it filed. Now I still have to mail off the paperwork to City Hall, to the mayor. I look for a post office that's still open because some post offices close early. There's a post office about 2 blocks away from City Hall. Now this is where City Hall is. So down this block and then up this block. So down Broadway, the rest of Broadway, and then up Barclays. Boom. There's the U.S. Postal Service. That's where I dropped off the mail. Get it certified, return receipt, mail that off. Look at the expected delivery date. Remind you, it's December 30th. They're telling me that the expected delivery date is January 4th, Tuesday, January 4th. I'm like, that seems like a long time, especially considering this post office is 2 blocks away from City Hall. I'm saying, okay, they're probably just giving themselves some room in case things are backed up, but I'm fully expecting this to get there way before, by the latest, Monday morning, the 3rd. At this point, I'm like, good. I've got the paperwork filed in court. I've got the mail being sent to City Hall. The only thing I really need to do now is get the check and hand that into the clerk on Monday morning, because I want to hand that directly into the clerk. Okay, Monday morning comes, I have my certified check, I have some extra copies of the documents, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to submit the check, an extra copy of the documents, and keep a copy for myself. When I get to the courthouse, I go up the steps, see the marshals at the front, and they tell me that due to COVID, the clerk's office is closed to the public. And I'm like, what are the odds? Like, so now I have to put the check into the drop box. I go, like I said, I have the check, 2 copies of the paperwork. I stamp all of the copies so that I can have a stamped copy for myself. Put the check inside the envelope, put that inside the drop box so that they know what case that check is for. Take my own personal copy, leave. I'm like, that's good. That's out the way. Let me see if the other mail has reached the city hall yet. Hasn't reached city hall yet. And by the way, City Hall, New York City Hall is right there. It's like a block and a half away from the courthouse. You've got the Southern District Courthouse, you've got the Court of Appeals, and the New York State Court, all in the same area, and that they're just like a block and a half away from City Hall. And the post office that I went to is just 2 blocks away from that. But at this point, the mail that I mailed from the post office still hasn't reached City Hall yet, but I've got everything filed. And then I look at the paperwork. I look at the paperwork that I just stamped and see that it's stamped the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. I put it in the wrong drop box. So like I said, you've got the Second Circuit Court of Appeals and the Southern District Court, but those are in 2 different buildings. The problem is the pro se office where I have to file my paperwork is in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals building. Its drop box is in the Southern District Courthouse. So even though I have to go to the Second Circuit building to file my paperwork with the pro se office, I have to go to the Southern District Courthouse to drop my paperwork in the drop box. My paperwork is in the wrong drop box. So at this point, my paperwork isn't even going to be filed on time because it's in the wrong drop box. Now I have to wait for the pro se office to open because it doesn't even open till 11 o'clock. I'm there too early. So I'm waiting. Finally, it opens. I go over there. I take my last copy, file it with them. But there's still the matter of the check. The check is still in the wrong drop box. He says, hey, you might as well just call the clerk's office and see if they have it yet and if they're going to, expedite getting it to us, because the court's actually not going to do anything until they get the money. So I'm on the phone back and forth, leave some messages, don't get through right away. Finally, I get through later on in the day and they're like, okay, yeah, we saw it. We realized that this is for the Southern District. Good thing I left the paperwork in there because it's captioned Southern District of New York. They had already sent the paperwork over to the Southern District. Yes, I checked Pacer. The complaint has been filed, but they still haven't received the check yet. Then I also checked the post office thing to see if the City Hall has gotten my paperwork yet. They haven't gotten it. So I still have until the next day, Tuesday, 9 o'clock, when that's supposed to arrive. So I've got my paperwork filed in the courthouse. And if you think all of that is crazy, what happens to the mail that's supposed to go to the mayor's office is really going to blow your mind. Because 2 things I'm waiting for now. I'm waiting for the check to get to the Southern District. I know it's been sent, but I want to actually see it hit so that way they can actually take action. And I want to see the mail that I'm tracking get to City Hall. 9 o'clock, it's supposed to be there by 9 o'clock Tuesday night, Tuesday the 4th. Tuesday, 9 o'clock comes and goes. No mail has arrived at City Hall yet. And according to the app, according to the tracking, it's in transit. It's on its way to the next facility. Like I said, I mailed it from a U.S. post office 2 blocks away from City Hall. The next facility should be City Hall. It's 2 blocks away from City Hall. So I get on the phone with the post office on Wednesday and I'm trying to find out what's going on. Now, if you've never had the misfortune of being on the post office customer service, you are a lucky person, because trying to get to a person, a live person, an actual person to speak to it's like a maze. If you've ever played Metal Gear, there's this maze. Metal Gear is an old Nintendo game. There's this maze where you've got this screen and you've got like 5 exits. And if you just go straight across, you'll end up back where you came from. But if you want to get to this location that you're supposed to, you have to go through certain exits in certain order. That's what it's like getting to a real person on the post office customer service hotline. So I wind up opting for text because I'm like, maybe this will be quicker. Texting with this person, eventually they tell me, hey, do you want to open a service complaint? Yes, I'll do it myself. You've been no help whatsoever. So I open up the service complaint and they tell me they're going to investigate it and look into it. By Thursday, the check has arrived and I look at Pacer, boom, it's there because the judge had already said, listen, we're not making any decision until we get our money. But at this point, they get their money. I'm like, yes, they got their money. So now I can expect a decision soon. Because with the TRO, the temporary restraining order is asking the court to act without even hearing from the government. That's a very tall ask, especially for a pro se litigant like me. But I'm still waiting for the mail that I sent from the post office to get to the city hall. At this point, I'm wondering if they just lost my mail and they're lying to me that it's in transit on the way to the next facility. Thursday the 6th passes, no news. Friday the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. Finally, we get to Monday the 10th. Monday, January 10th, which is almost an entire week after it was supposed to arrive. At 5:50 in the morning, it says that it's reached the post office facility. Now, the City Hall, New York City Hall, the zip code is 10007. The post office that I sent the mail from is in the zip code 10007. The post office that the mail arrives at on Monday the 10th is the zip code of that post office is 10007. What I'm telling you is that on Monday, January 10th, 12 days after I had mailed this package, 12 days after mailing this paperwork, the mail that I had mailed from this post office arrived back at that same post office. 12 days later, the mail that I mailed from that post office arrived at that post office and now was ready for pickup. 12 days later, the same post office. So by 6 o'clock, it's ready for pickup. By 11 o'clock that day, somebody from City Hall comes, picks it up. Finally, everything is where it's supposed to be. My case is filed in the court. The check is where it's supposed to be. The paperwork that I sent to the mayor is finally at its destination. Now I can wait for something to actually happen. I'm suing the mayor of New York City on the grounds that the key to New York City, the vaccine mandate that stops unvaccinated people from being able to go to movies, gyms, museums, hotel conference centers, convention centers, concerts, stadiums, sporting centers, that is unconstitutional. I am arguing that it violates both the First and 14th Amendments. It violates the First Amendment's freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and association. Speech. I know you may think, okay, well, how does it violate the freedom of speech? They're not stopping you from speaking. Yes, but what a lot of people don't realize is that the Supreme Court recognizes that the freedom of speech not only encompasses the freedom of a person to speak, but the freedom of a person to receive speech. It's most notably referred to in like the prison setting, where administrations ban books or certain publications, and then the freedom of speech is implicated because you're interfering with the inmate's ability to receive speech. So regardless of how important you think a movie or a museum may be, this is protected speech, protected expression, and the key to New York City, these vaccine mandates are interfering with unvaccinated people's ability to receive these forms of speech. The freedom of religion is violated because if people have an exemption to being vaccinated on religious grounds, they're still being prohibited and banned from certain locations. And when we come to freedom of assembly and association, specifically in a political sense, that is also being violated because where do political gatherings, conventions, and the like happen? In convention centers, in hotel conference rooms. These are the places where a lot of these events are being held, are organized and held. And so it's interfering with an unvaccinated individual's ability to organize, to attend, or to participate in these types of events, thereby infringing on their freedom of association and assembly in the political context. It also infringes on the 14th Amendment because that is where the right of privacy is found. The Supreme Court and the Second Circuit have made that determination. A lot of people look at the Fourth or Ninth Amendments, but particularly in the Second Circuit, that has been expressly rejected. So if we're looking for the right to privacy, we're looking at the 14th Amendment. But that's not it. There's also the simple fact that due process is implicated in the manner in which the vaccine mandate is implemented. One, there's not process given. So there's no opportunity for somebody to be tried, heard, and then found guilty of violating this vaccine mandate. It's blanket punishment being handed out to people without any process being provided. But more so than that, even more egregiously, is the simple fact that not only does the key to New York City stop people from being able to, unvaccinated people from being able to attend these places, the key to New York City stops unvaccinated people from being able to work in these places. Now, that is something that rises to a whole nother level. What the government is saying is that if you are unvaccinated, you are not allowed to earn a living. You are not allowed to engage in gainful employment and provide for your and your family's basic needs. They're telling you that if you're not vaccinated, they want you to starve. They want you to starve. They want you to be unable to clothe yourself, to pay your rent. They are subjecting unvaccinated people to a slow death. They are subjecting unvaccinated people to a slow death of starvation, of being without shelter, of being without health care, of being without the basic necessities of life. That shocks the conscience. That, in addition to being unethical, immoral, from a constitutional standpoint, is cruel and unusual punishment. And you may think that that's the Eighth Amendment, but the Eighth Amendment is only implicated when there's a conviction. Like I said, there's no process, so there is no conviction. So the Constitution finds that when you are punishing people who haven't even been convicted, never mind subjecting them to cruel and unusual punishment, when you're subjecting people, unconvicted people, to any punishment, it is a violation of either the Fifth, if it's the federal government, or if it's the state, it's a violation of the 14th Amendment of due process. And these are the grounds that I'm challenging and seeking to strike down the key to New York City on. And there has been movement, there has been some decisions made. Lastly, I want to tell you that the court has ruled on my TRO, on my motion for a temporary restraining order, and they have denied my TRO. They have declined to grant me a temporary restraining order against the government. It was a tall ask. It was an incredibly tall ask for me as a pro se litigant to ask the court to rule against the government without giving the government a chance to respond. Additionally, what ultimately worked against me for the purpose of the TRO is that several people have have filed lawsuits against the key to New York City and have not yet been successful. So that made it seem as if, even though our grounds are not the same, that makes it seem as if the likelihood of success is not in my favor. Now, what will change is when we have a chance for the government and me to present our cases more thoroughly to see what the court rules then. Because among other things, there are several differences between me and some other cases, like one case that challenged the key to New York City for violating the freedom of speech, but that was filed by the venue. The venue was claiming that their free speech was violated. They did not, however, cite anything on the basis of speech being received. And the court, using the narrow framework under which they challenged it, the court only addressed that their speech was not being stifled, that they were not being prohibited from speaking. The court never addressed whether the fact that people were being prohibited from receiving their speech. But in my case, it's different on several levels, including that I am the person that's being prohibited from receiving speech. I believe that is one of the grounds, one of the areas in which my case differs from other cases, and the arguments that I'm making differ from theirs. In addition to the fact that nobody has challenged the key to New York City on the procedural grounds and the implication of punishment and cruel and unusual punishment that I have. So I will definitely keep you posted to let you know what's going to happen next, because I'm filing this summonses to get us to the next stage in the process, and I will let you know what happens next. As always, don't forget to give me the thumbs up, like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you disagree, if you think that the key to New York City is great, it's awesome, and that it's not going anywhere, and that everybody needs to be vaccinated no matter what the government does to them, feel free to give me a thumbs down and tell me how you think starving people to death improves public health. I'll see you next time.